Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. Today is episode 4 of AI Assisted DevOps Zero to Hero series. Till now, we completed 3 episodes in this series, starting with Introduction to AI for DevOps, where we learned the fundamentals of generative AI. Then we learned about prompt engineering and various prompt engineering techniques that are useful for a software engineer. In the last class, we learned how to run LLMs locally and make API calls to the LLMs. And also in the last class, we learned how to create our very first generative AI project where we used LLMs to generate Docker files. In case you missed it, I would highly recommend that video. You will find the video link in the description. Now, saying all this, what we will learn today, we will learn AI powered or AI assisted shell scripting. The most exciting part of today's video is that it is the most easiest video of this entire series. I'll tell you the reason why, but make sure you watch this video till the end. It's going to be super easy. So let's get started. First of all, what is AI assisted shell scripting? Basically, we are going to use some AI tools. It can be chatbots or it can be AI pair programmers to write shell scripting and to write efficient shell scripting. If you ask me, Abhishek, what is one particular field of DevOps where AI has significant impact? That is, if I use AI for a particular DevOps task, which one that would be where AI can perform super good? I would say shell scripting. There is a reason for it. If you take Python, for example, so Python, whenever you write Python script or you write Python programs, what you do is you use some modules or you use some packages. Problems with the large language models is that most of the times they generate the Python code for you, but they use outdated modules or they use outdated packages. Sometimes these packages might have CVEs, that is vulnerabilities, or because the package is deprecated, that might not be working as expected. So you waste a lot of time. And you also have to make sure the code is secure. So you run some security scanning as well. When it comes to shell scripting, this is not the case because if you look at shell scripting, when we learned shell scripting in DevOps Zero to Hero, what did I tell you? Shell scripting is nothing but group of shell commands. If you know how to use shell commands, how to combine different shell commands, that itself is shell scripting, right? So what are the shell commands that we use most of the times? We might be using sed, we might be using for loop, we might be using awk, grep, we might be using basic commands like ls, pwd. If you notice carefully, these commands almost never change. Even if the parameters to these commands change, they are most likely backward compatible. If I have to explain this in layman terminology, if you have written a shell script 3 years ago, it's most likely the script is going to work even today. Why? Because if you used a for loop in the shell scripting, that for loop syntax or the semantic for the for loop, they almost never change when it comes to shell scripting. Just like how Linux changes very rarely, the shell commands inputs or outputs are also changed very, very rare. So if you're using awk, that would most likely be the same even after 3 years. If you're using grep, I have been using grep for almost 11 years now. And if I have a grep command that I have written 11 years ago, 100% it will work even today. So that's why shell scripting using AI is something that you can expect works most of the time. So this is one of the DevOps engineering tasks where you can actually trust AI and you can expect AI to generate expected output. Of course, prompt engineering is important. You need to explain the design to it. You need to explain the constraints to it. You need to explain the context to it. If you provide all of them, you don't have to worry like Python if the package is deprecated, is it affected by CVEs, like if the code is vulnerable, you don't have to worry a lot of times. Just like Python, even if you take Terraform, scenario is same. You are writing HCL files where if you are creating resources on AWS provider version might have changed. Or if you're using VPC module in Terraform, maybe the module parameters have changed. But in Shell, that does not happen. Similarly, with Kubernetes as well, you will have API versions that are updating, fields that are changing. So all that I have to say, if you're using AI assistance for shell scripting, you are already doing great. If you are not using, start using from today. Now we will head to writing shell scripting using AI pair programming. I will say what it is. I will show you how to install the AI tool and how to write the script as well with all the best practices. So what is AI pair programming? It's very simple. When you are taking assistance of AI to write code, then it is called as pair programming. For example, assume you are a junior engineer. You are a fresher who joined in a company. Mostly, when you are writing code in the initial days, you would write it under the assistance of senior developer, right? If you are changing any important piece of code in the initial days, you would shadow a senior engineer. You would actually see how that senior engineer is writing code. Then the next step, you will probably sit next to the senior developer. As you are writing the code, senior developer might suggest some best practices, right? Senior developer might tell you that, okay, instead of using this package, you can use this one. This is how you write code. This process is called as pair programming because instead of doing it with a senior developer, you are doing with AI. It is called as AI pair programmer. So whenever you are writing script, you will use a AI tool that is going to watch what you are doing and it is going to suggest you and it is also going to help you write the code. So the extension that we are going to use is going to watch us writing the script and it is going to help us. Abhishek, how can I use these tools? Very simple. There is a free tool that is available, which is GitHub Copilot. So go to any ID, but preferably Visual Studio Code, and go to the extensions tab. If you search for Copilot, you will find GitHub Copilot. Just click on the install button and that's it. You have the GitHub Copilot extension observing what you are doing in VS Code. If you don't want it to observe, you can just click on the disable button and it will not watch the code that you are writing. Then you can just take your terminal, create a file, and you can just start writing the code. I'll take my terminal and let me just create a folder. Okay, you cannot see the terminal. I'm just creating a folder called shell example. Okay, so I'll open that folder for you, shell example, and I will start writing the file here. Now, what are the best practices? Abhishek, can I just start writing the script and let GitHub Copilot observe what I'm writing and ask it to suggest? There are few things that you need to follow. Those are, the first thing is provide the appropriate file names. If you are creating a script for VPC creation, make sure you provide the file name something like AWS underscore VPC underscore creation dot sh. Now this file name will tell the Copilot what is the context of your script, because Copilot is installed here. It does not know what you're writing. Maybe you're writing wrong code. Maybe you're writing the right code. If you provide the file name appropriately, it will already have a context. Oh, okay. Now Abhishek is going to write code for AWS VPC creation.sh or VPC creation. So, I can correct if something goes wrong, or even I can suggest the code for Abhishek. Then, second thing, because you cannot explain everything in the file name, provide description at the beginning of the file. This will provide more context to the AI pair programmer. In our case, GitHub Copilot. So provide description which explains what is this script, what are the constraints to the script, if you have any conditions, if you have, something that the script should take care of or AI should take care of, make sure you provide or highlight those points in the description. Third thing is, if you are using variables, just like the file names, make sure you provide the relevant variable names. Again, this is for context only. 4, if you don't understand something, okay, let's say AI wrote a particular line. If you don't understand, don't ignore it. What you can do is you can ask AI. There is a feature in GitHub Copilot. I'm going to show you. You can hover on top of that line. You can highlight that line and ask AI, what did you do here? So that both you and AI have the context. Again, it's concept of pair programming, right? If you're sitting next to a senior developer, and if senior developer asks you to write a line of code, you will not blindly write that. You will ask your senior developer, what is this line doing? You have to do the same thing with AI as well. Very simple, right? Perfect. Now let's create file with name. What are we going to create? Let's use the same example. We will create a VPC component in AWS. For the simplicity, we will just create VPC and we will create one subnet within it. So the file name has to be AWS underscore VPC underscore create.sh. Always we start the shell script with shebang. We all know that. So let's provide that and just press enter. You will see the magic that AI is already suggesting you few things. It is asking, should I start declaring the variables? No. Do not allow AI to start with variable declaration or something. First, provide more context to it, because it just assumes things with the file name. Now within the file name, you might not provide everything. So that's why provide description and make it understand things better. So I will say description, create VPC in AWS, where create VPC, create a public subnet, and do we need anything else like VPC, public subnet? Do we need private subnet? No, for now, this part is enough, just the VPC and public subnet. However, I have few conditions. That is, verify if user has AWS installed. And within this condition, the sub condition is that user might be using Windows, Linux, or Mac. And finally, verify if AWS CLI is configured. Abhishek, what are these conditions? It's very simple. So whenever, if you watched our previous videos where we actually wrote these kind of things using shell scripting. So whenever you are using shell, how shell scripting can create resources on AWS. So the thing is that within the shell, either you can use curl command, or to make it simple, you can use AWS CLI, where you will install AWS CLI and you will provide your credentials to the AWS CLI, access key and secret access key. And using these credentials, let's say you are saying AWS S3 MB, that is make bucket name. What happens? AWS CLI using the credentials, it will talk to the AWS APIs and creates S3 bucket. Similarly, VPC, similarly EC2 instance or any AWS resource. That's why we should verify AWS CLI is installed. Second thing is it is configured. Those are the conditions that I provided. Okay, perfect. Now you will see the magic of AI assistance or AI pair programming. So first, it will start declaring the variables for us, which is a good practice, right? Instead of hard coding the things. What is the VPC CIDR block? It is asking us, okay, let's give a CIDR block 10.0.0.0/16, let's say. Okay, then what is the subnet CIDR? 10.0.3.0/24. Okay, if you are not aware what is CIDR, what is subnet, it's important for you to understand these concepts. I will provide the networking fundamentals link in the description. You can learn all of it. We have covered all of these things in our previous videos. That's why, it becomes out of context if I go ahead and explain CIDR, IP address. I'll provide link in the description. For now, just understand it is doing the best practices by declaring the variables. What should be the name of the VPC? Let's say demo VPC. What should be the name of the subnet? Okay, let's use demo subnet. Okay, and it is also asking the subnet availability zone. I said US East 1. We are good with the variables. Now it is taking our constraints. See, I'm not writing even a single line of code. I'm just using enter and the tab. I just pressed enter. Now it gave me this particular line. If I'm okay, I'll press tab and again I'll press enter. So this is the if condition. Now, Abhishek, I don't understand this if condition. I assume it is right, but I don't have that good knowledge of shell scripting. How can I know what is this particular line? Should I copy this, go to ChatGPT and ask? No, it's not needed. Just hover on top of these lines, then press Command I. If you're using Windows, I think it's Control I. If you're using Mac, it's Command I. And you can, or what you can also do simply is you can hover on top of these lines, right click, and you will see the Copilot. You can ask it to explain. Directly you can do this as well. Here it explains you that, okay, this is the thing. This is the if statement. Using this particular command, we are verifying if AWS CLI exists in the path. If it exists, I'm assuming it is installed. Otherwise, I'll provide the steps to install or I'll just ignore. You can also ask Copilot to explain this in Telugu. It's multilingual. It can give you the same thing in Telugu, Hindi, or any language. Okay, perfect. Now, verify if CLI is configured. Again, it is just verifying using the STS get caller identity, and this is the script for it. Now it will proceed with the next things. That is VPC creation and public subnet creation. Okay, this is the command for VPC creation. And it is asking, do you need a tag for the VPC? If you're interested, you can do it. Otherwise, you can also ignore the tag. Create subnet, and it generated the entire code for create subnet. And looking at the above step, I assume it will also add a tag to the subnet. Perfect. Okay, that's all. This is our script. Now, it is just saying, should I echo the VPC ID and the subnet ID? End of the script. Even writing a single line of code, we wrote this entire shell script using GitHub Copilot and pair programming. Let's save this file, and before we try to execute it, Abhishek, I have a question. Instead of GitHub Copilot, can I use anything else? Obviously, GitHub Copilot is not the only option. You have Cursor AI. To be honest, Cursor AI is actually better than GitHub Copilot for certain tasks. Let's say you're writing Python script. Cursor AI is better. Let's say you're writing Terraform. Cursor AI is better. However, Cursor AI is not free. It is free for limited tokens. Maybe you can write 1 or 2 shell scripts, but it's not completely free. So if you're looking for completely free utility, go for GitHub Copilot. If you're okay paying and if you're okay using, then you can go for Cursor AI. There are other options as well, pieces for developers, a lot of other things, but these are the ones that I would recommend. GitHub Copilot as well as Cursor AI. Now let's verify if this script works fine or not. Of course, looking at the script itself, I can understand because I keep writing the scripts. So I can understand it works fine. But as a human, we might miss few things. Let's see by actually running the script. So I'll take my terminal. I can also use the terminal on VS Code, but somehow I prefer the native terminal. Okay, let's head to the folder, shell example. Let's see the permissions to it. Okay, these permissions are not enough. I'll just assign 777. Assigning 777 is not good because you are technically giving permissions to every user, every group of this particular machine to access the script. But this is just an example script, so I granted it. Otherwise, use the right permissions. Let's try to execute it. AWS underscore VPC underscore create.sh. If you look at my machine, I already have AWS installed. Okay, and I already have AWS configure. That means AWS is already configured in my machine. You can see the access key ID, you can see the secret, everything is configured. And even if I run AWS S3 LS, I got the list of S3 buckets. That means my AWS is installed as well as configured. In case it is not installed and configured, the script would throw an error. That is, your AWS is not installed and configured. You can try that by removing AWS CLI or not installing it. You can give it a try. Okay, VPC create.sh. What did it say? An error occurred when calling the create subnet. Value US East 1 for availability zone is invalid. US hyphen East hyphen 1A. So it is saying subnets can currently only be created in AP South 1. Okay, that is because very simple. When I ran AWS configure, I defaulted it to the region AP South 1. That's why it's failing. What I'll do is I'll just modify the script. And here I will provide the region as AP South 1 and AP South 1A. Okay, let's rerun the script. /VPC AWS underscore VPC underscore create.sh. Let's see this time if it can create or not. Perfect. It created the VPC and it created the subnet as well. Now your task is to write another shell script like this, where or extend the shell script and ask AI to support a command line argument. That means instead of running the script like this, if I pass a parameter called delete, or if I pass a parameter called tear down, then the created VPC and created subnet should be deleted, right? You can also make it more interesting. So you can say this script should accept two parameters, AWS underscore VPC underscore create.sh. First parameter is create. When it receives a parameter called create, it should create the resources, VPC and subnet. When it receives tear down, it should see if VPC and subnet exists. If it exists, it should tear down the created VPC as well as subnet. Isn't it interesting? If you followed our prompt engineering lecture, you will know how to add constraints to the description and get this scripting work as expected. So take this as assignment. Okay. By default, if you run AWS underscore VPC underscore create.sh, it should say, please provide input as create or tear down. If you provide create as input, it should create VPC and subnet like this. If you provide tear down as input, it should delete the created VPC and subnet. If you provide anything else, it should say invalid input parameter. So this is my assignment for you. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know in the comment section if you liked it. See you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.